I'm going to start the recording. Emma said that when I called, I wasn't on a speakerphone, just a phone. And so I don't know if a speakerphone is the option. Would you like me to get started and then we can send the recording to the folks at Otter Creek? No. Okay, great. All right. Well, I hopefully the folks at Otter Creek are continuing to work on their audio, and we are going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Good. I'm glad that many of you have gotten into today's meet. This is what it looks like for those of you who are logged into today's meet. You just put your name in this blue box and click say, and then I'll monitor this off to the side so that if you have questions, please use the today's meet area to ask questions, and I know that there's a contact person in the room that will send them my way as well. So we're gonna get started. I know many of you have a username and password for my Lexia. Maybe some of you don't. I do want to get to have you get into the demonstration site so we can talk a little bit about the data. And I also know that some of you have already started with your students. So if you have data already with your students, go ahead and log in. If you would like to go into the demonstration site, I'll give you that information in just a little bit. So I'm assuming that you can hear me all right, and you're getting into today's meet. One of the things we're going to talk about is implementing Lexia with fidelity. And I just wondered what you all thought is like, what is one way that you can implement Lexia with fidelity? I know you've used Lexia for a year and you know how it works. And we're going to talk about some of the new features that are coming up in Core 5. And then we're also going to talk about the new look in my Lexia so that you know how to manipulate around that. So any ideas, just pop them into today's meet or shout them out, and Debbie or Natisha or Kalisha will pop them into Blue Jeans. So what I'm looking for is at least one way that you can implement, one way of implementing Lexia with fidelity. And there's actually 5 ways, and we'll talk about them. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that. So go ahead, and I'll let you do that as I continue to go forward. My name is Beth Daly. I'm coming to you from actually northern Wisconsin, and it actually looks like pretty much like this. The leaves are starting to change color, so I'm going to have to update some of my slides, but that's a little bit about what it looks like in my neck of the woods and my family and some of my background. So, and I also believe that everyone has the teacher training guide. That is a great resource, and it does describe the changes that you're going to see in Core 5. For this hour that we have together, what we're going to do is, like I said, overview the new Core 5, what you're going to see there, and an overview of the new My Lexia. So if you've been into My Lexia already, you've seen that it looks different. Basically, as you know, Core 5 is an integrated model. It involves that student piece, students working on the software, the prescribed number of minutes, And then the data. As they're working in the software, their minutes are being recorded so that you can help monitor to be sure they meet that target, and that those Lexia lessons that they need if they're struggling are in there, as well as the skill builders and other kinds of really valuable reports. And that's in My Lexia. You're going to find those targeted resources that you can use when a student is struggling, and that you will want to prescribe to them when they have mastered levels within Lexia so that they can continue to practice. So that's what we're going to talk about today, as well as just a short little demo on how to add students to the My Lexia site. So if there's anything else that I've missed, let me know. And so we're going to, like I said, examine Core 5, the new features. Especially want you to be able to find and retrieve targeted resources in My Lexia. We'll do a little check for understanding, add students, and then we'll conclude this part at 4. And for those of you who have more questions and want to dig a little bit deeper, I'm available to stay to dive even a little bit deeper, especially into the reports. If you look on page 2 in your teacher training guide, you're going to see this scope and sequence. So basically, this has not changed. The 6 reading skills that are addressed in Core 5, you'll find at the top. And the levels within Lexia are represented in these 18 rows. So that's the same. You can see how systematically all those 6 reading skills are addressed as the students move from level to level. And then you can see over here how the levels correspond with the grade level. Lexia prescribes those weekly number of minutes to reach what we call the end of the year benchmark. So if I'm a first grader, the benchmark is to get me through level 9 in Lexia, because that's the end of first grade. So if I'm working in level 3 and I'm a first grader, I have a lot more to do to get to the end of level 9 than if I'm working in level 7. So that's kind of how those targeted number of minutes are prescribed. It's based on how far students need to go. It also is based on their rate and accuracy. So there's a formula within Lexia that looks at all of that data and then prescribes a certain number of minutes. And that prescription changes, updates at the beginning of each month. So you'll see that prescription change depending on the progress of the student. So I said there were 5 keys to implementing Lexia with fidelity. So far, no one has decided to jump in to that little question I asked. So I'm just, and I know you know these things, and you're going to go, oh, this is so obvious. But of course, one of the keys to implementing Lexia with fidelity is to meet the target number of online minutes each week. I've just been talking about that. And for you to check My Lexia at least weekly to see where students are struggling. Now, Lexia will send you an email message by default semi-monthly, and you can change that if that would be helpful for Lexia to remind you by email, and that can be changed weekly and daily. And you can also have it never come to you, because some teachers are using Lexia so often they don't need a reminder. So, but at least weekly, you need to be going into My Lexia. Because the third key is that you do intervene when a student is struggling. When their name shows up on your plan instruction list, that you're working with them to help them with that skill one-on-one or in small groups, so that they can go back into the software and demonstrate mastery. The fourth key is to reinforce the online learning using skill builders. Those are paper and pencil worksheets that students use again on their own or in small groups. It can be sent home as homework. It's a great way to continue to practice, to really cement that learning, and also to build fluency. And then the fifth way is to celebrate student success using achievement certificates. And the achievement certificates have been modified. So I want to show you, be sure you see that. All right, so Natisha's asked me to pause just a little bit so she can do a little explanation at Dodd. I think Dodd is new to using Lexia. Is going to be using Lexia for the first time this fall. So it would be great if those of you who are in today's meet, if you have some advice that you would give somebody new to using Lexia, your fellow teachers at Dodd, that would be wonderful because you've had experience. You know, you can maybe say something about how students are experiencing Lexia, what some of the feedback from the students have been, what you think. That would be great. And or any questions about these keys to implementing with fidelity. I'm kind of looking for Natisha to say it's okay to move forward from here. One of the things that I wanted to share, especially after we've talked about implementing Lexia with fidelity, is that we actually have some really great research that shows us what happens when students use Lexia with fidelity. Here is an example of a group of students we looked at from across the country. We looked at this group used Lexia with fidelity for 4 months out of the school year. So this is where they started in September of 2013. 50% of them were in and above grade level, 16% were 2 grade levels below, and 34% were 1 grade level below. And then at the end of the year, in June, this is kind of the shift that happened. So when students use Lexia with fidelity, you know, getting those minutes and getting those lessons, then we can really see some shifts in their progress, and especially getting them, more of them, on target at or above that grade level benchmark. We were especially interested in what this most at-risk group, what happened with them. And what we saw is that our at-risk students made tremendous gains. And this is when we get them the minutes. I mean, that's kind of the key, is how do you weave Lexia into the school day so that students meet their target number of minutes. And 32% of those at-risk students gained 3 years. I mean, that's huge. 43% gained 2 years. So if we can really figure out how to implement with fidelity, we can really help these students make tremendous gains, especially even our at-risk students. So let's talk about the student experience online. And I know many of you are familiar with Lexia, and I know the folks at Dodd have been reviewing some of the training videos. Just to review what happens when students first start to use Lexia, they go through an auto placement test. Many of you know that. If you have a new student, that you'll see that will happen, and then the auto placement places the student at the appropriate level, and that hasn't changed at all. That's still what happens in Lexia, and then the students are placed in that level, and when they enter the software, they will experience this instructional model. And I'm just going to check here to see if there are any questions. Oh, great. Some great feedback about students reactions to Lexia in the today's meet. Thanks. So this instructional model, still the same, where the students experience the standard step, and this is described on page 5 of your, at the bottom, this 3-step instructional branching. It's kind of good to know how that software works and even kind of to review it, because they start in the standard step. It's an independent step. They are working through a series of activities in various units. And if they can demonstrate 90 to 100% mastery, then they move on. And that's when they're eligible for those skill builders that we talked about. Then they help develop automaticity and expressive skills. Now, if the student isn't able to demonstrate mastery, the software branches them to guided practice. And in guided practice, you can see there's a little more support, fewer distractors, focusing on what the student was struggling with. If the student starts to understand in this guided step, the software will move them back to standard with the idea that, whoop, on they go. But if they are struggling, the software will move them back to guided practice. If they're struggling in guided practice, the software will move them to the 3rd step, which is direct instruction. And in direct instruction, they're getting explicit teaching and practice on a very targeted area. The software will then move them back to standard, hoping that that explicit teaching is enough to help them demonstrate mastery, and they move on. But if it's not, the software will continue to try to help them through these 3 steps. If the student finds themselves in direct instruction more than once, that's when they are identified as struggling, and they will show up on your plan instruction list in My Lexia. And that's when those Lexia lessons are available for you to work with the student. Doesn't mean you have to use the lesson. The lesson, though, is a very scripted approach to working one-on-one or in small groups on a very targeted skill. So that's how the instructional model works. And these colors you will see in the unit progress bar as students are moving through the software. And so if you know the colors of the branching, you'll know what's happening if you're monitoring students. And this apple that you can barely see, but on this lower left, that turns red when the student has gone to direct instruction more than once. So that's another clue for you that they're struggling. And we recommend that if students are, if that apple does turn red, they either connect with their teacher for direct instruction right then. If that's not possible, we suggest that they move on to another reading area and then wait to go back to that area until after their teacher has worked with them. So that's important to understand. Now what I want to do is show you some things, and you can see these screenshots for the most part on page 4 and 5. This is what the new Core 5 is going to look like. Many of the features are very similar. That version 2, it will be released sometime at the end of this month. But one of the cool things that you'll see in version 2 is that the students will have a dashboard, and they will be able to monitor their own minutes, which is way cool, because before it was only you who had that information. But now Mike B here knows that he's worked for 15 minutes and his goal is 40. So, he can, be working to meet that goal and have that, right there in front of him. And here's the number of units he completed this week. And so that is going to be a nice feature in the new Core 5. And the other thing that's going to be cool is that there's a warm-up. This warm-up will change slightly. There's always been a warm-up before students get started. It's a nice way to reinforce a concept they've previously mastered. And in this new version, they can choose from either either one of these two activities, and they are encouraged to beat their best time. So it's a way to also work on speed of processing as well as reinforcing the concepts. So that's a new thing that you're going to see. And the activity selection screen will be just a little bit different. Instead of that bar on the bottom, you'll see the unit segments in a circle around the picture. Again, it will fill in with color when they've completed a unit so that the student can easily see just visually where they're at with all 5 of those reading areas. So that's a nice thing. We've also added just fun facts. These images are clickable, and so the student could click on an image and they'll get some information about whatever that if it's whatever that character or image is. So some contextual knowledge they can obtain as well. And then instead of a lock at the end of that first unit, you'll be able to see first half, second half by these 2 buttons in the middle. So that's the activity selection screen. And then that's the same. It'll be very similar where when they have finished all of the units in a reading area, it will gray out and they won't be able to go back in. So on the activity screen, where this unit progress bar, remember I said green, blue, yellow, those 3 steps of instructional branching, you'll see that. And you'll see there's still the red apple here, the apple that will turn, it's not red now, but if they're struggling, it will be red. They can increase the volume, the size of the screen. And over here, the 2 buttons that will, the question mark, again, still repeats the directions. And this button, they click to rehear the prompt. So pretty much the same as it has been. And so you kind of have at the top of page 5, what all those symbols mean, is available for you. So any questions about what's different in Core 5? One of the other things that you'll be able to do with this new version is you will be able to select from 7 different languages. So if you have students who English is not their first language, you can have the directions in the activities in one of 7 languages. So you'll be able to make that choice for your students. All right, so let's look at Lexia lessons and skill builders, and I want you to be able to find them. And so if you've already logged in to My Lexia with your own username and password, that's great. If you want to log in using this demonstration to the demonstration site, the email address is class@core5demo.com and the password is success. So I'm going to do that same thing. There we go. So class@core5demo.com and the password is success. So I'm going to go back to that slide for those of you who, and if somebody in Blue Jeans will let me know that people are all in My Lexia, however they want to get there, that would be great. So Debbie, let me know how things are going in Chico and Tisha and Kalisha. I would love to hear that Otter Creek got their audio to work. So is everybody logged into My Lexia? That's what I want to see. Okay, Mableville, yes. Thanks, Kalisha. How about you, Debbie? How are things going in Chico? So I haven't heard from Debbie, so I'm not sure where you're at there. In Chico? Maplevale is ready to go. I'm going to assume maybe that you're doing okay in Chico. Okay, you're ready. All right, good. Okay, good. All right. So, Lexia Lessons and Skill Builders. I want you to see the new library, and that there's actually a new third library. But always good to reinforce the difference between these two resources. Lexia Lessons you use when students are struggling, and Skill Builders you use to build automaticity and expand expressive language. So once a student has mastered a level, Skill Builders appear in their in the student plan, in the student combined report, and you'll see which ones they're eligible for. But let's go to the MyLexia site and find those resources. So if you are in the demo site or in your own, with your own login, what you're going to see is just a little rearrangement of some things. The tabs are along the side here now. Reading, resources, manage. You may not have this assessments tab if you logged in with your own username and password. But what I want you to do is click on this resource tab, and you're going to come to lots of different resources related to the demo site. Has some resources related to rapid assessment, and you will have these two resources, the strategies, just to reiterate, that's a program that works with the same basic reading skills as Core 5, but the activities are designed for an older learner, 6th grade and beyond. So we're going to focus on Core 5. And these are the three libraries we're going to look at, but I do want to point out over here, you have access to a student program. So you can click on the student program at any time, and what will happen is the program will open, and you will be able to go into, using your username and password, go into a demonstration mode of the student program so that you can use it to work with students. You can experiment on your own, but it is a great thing to know that you have access to. You have tremendous resources under the resource material tab, training guides, and some additional resources that I'll point out a little bit later, and then training on demand videos. But what I want you to do is to click on this Lexia Lesson Library link, and it'll open the Lexia Lesson Library. And what we've done here is that we've added some different ways to filter this library, because there are 161 items. So you can now filter the library by grade level, by level within Lexia, the 1 through 18, and then skill levels. So if I go back to my slides and I say, okay, I want to find a level 10 Lexia lesson on comprehension and building sentences. So I'm going to go to level 10, and you can do this right along with me. And I'm going to go to the skill area, comprehension, and boom, here's my lesson on building sentences. Now, if I click on if I select this item by clicking on this radial button, I now can open the lesson, open just the scripts, so just those three areas of instruction, of scripts, and then or just the reproducible. So I'm going to open the entire lesson in this example. And what you can see here is, as I slide down, they're all designed the same, where you have direct instruction strategies. This is, teacher working one-on-one with a student or in a small group. And you can see that you're able to do things with the student that the software is not able to do. In this example, I made a wish, make a sentence. When you write a sentence, it begins with a capital letter. So you can really be talking through these items. And then some guided practice, independent application, and then wrap up. There are some great adaptations for students who need more support and for students who are ready to move on. All of the lessons have some sort of a manipulative for the student that accompanies the lesson attached. So you can download that and you can print it right from here. So I'm going to close that. Now, and then you can clear. This clear all over here on the upper right gets me right back to the beginning of the library. So what I want you to do is to find a level 4 phonics short vowel A lesson and go ahead and open that up and kind of take a look at that and look at how it's different than what we're able to do online. So you're looking for a level 4 phonics short vowel A lesson. And for those of you who are following along in the training guide, the Lexia Lessons and Skill Builders and the Lexia Instructional Connections are described on page 8 and 9. So if I go back to the library, right, it was level 4 phonics lesson and then short vowel A. So this is the lesson, and hopefully you were able to find that and you could open it up and take a look at how that lesson really does, how it really is different than what the student is doing online is what I wanted you to observe. One of the things that you're also able to do is to batch your selections. So let's say I wanted all of the lessons on phonics in level 4. So I just clicked on this radial button at the top by the lesson, and now all these buttons have selected, or I could just select the ones that I wanted. And you now have the ability to, let's say I just wanted the reproducibles. I could just click on the reproducibles only, and now for those 3 lessons are just the reproducibles that I can print off and have when I'm working with a student. So that's a nice feature too. So easy way to produce to select the reproducibles. You can read the scripts on your computer, and then you can have this to work with the student. So that's a little bit about the lessons. We're going to go back to that resource tab, and this time we're going to click on the skill builders. And so just a little bit about the skill builders, because sometimes this is a part of Lexia that, when you're implementing during that first year, you're really working to try to get the students the minutes, and you're trying to figure out how do I, when do I work with them one-on-one when they're struggling? And that's a lot to deal with. The skill builders are another piece that really helps cement that learning, kind of complete that circle. They reinforce and extend the online learning, promote skill generalization, and they're identified in that student combined report in my Lexia. So what I want to do is just show you how you can get around. There's a couple of new things with the Skill Builder library I want you to see. So we're in the Skill Builder library, and I'm going to go back to that resource button in case. So back to this resource tab, I clicked on Skill Builders, and if I wanted to, again, sort on, let's say level 4 again, and I've got all the level 4 skill builders. So let's say, if you are going to assign skill builders to students, you may have the luxury of having some volunteers to help you, and or aides, and there is now an answer key. So let's say I'm going to have somebody help me give students feedback who are working on these level 4 skill builders. I can now open the entire skill builder, open the answer key, or open the skill builder with the answer key. So let's say I just want the answer keys because I want to give them to somebody who's going to be assessing student work and or giving them feedback. And now here's the answer key for that particular skill builder. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. So how are we doing? Maybe give me some feedback, Debbie and Natisha and Kalisha. Okay, they're doing good. All right. The third resource are the Lexia Instructional Connections. That's brand new in the My Lexia site, and I'm just going to open one of them. We've just received lots of feedback from people from teachers who would like some classroom ideas related to reading, and so we put together this library with classroom ideas to work on the various reading. Various reading areas. So that's a new resource for you to explore, and you have access to that. So that's a little bit about, so the Lexia lessons, the skill builders, and now this new instructional connections. I mean, you can use the connections to work individually, small group, or whole group. But unlike the lessons or the skill builders, they're not like prescribed for the student. Okay, so we have a good amount of time. So we're going to dive into the data a little more. And on page 6 and 7 in your teacher training guide is some really good information about the basic reports, because the data is designed to help you answer these 3 questions, and that's how that information on those 2 pages is described. Who is struggling? How is my class progressing? And how do I support an individual student? So let's take a look at that. We're going to go back to my Lexia. So if you join me back in my Lexia, and we've been at this resource tab, we're going to go back up to the reading tab here. And I am looking at, if you're with me on the demo district, we're looking at a kindergarten site, and I'm going to actually select the first grade site because there's usually a little bit more data there. And I'm looking at Archer's first grade, and what we see right in the beginning, right up front now, actually just like we did before. So the reading tab, all the reports are going to be under this reading tab. And the list of all of the students is here. So if I wanted to look at the student combined report for any of these students, I just click on their name and it would take me to their student combined report, which we'll look at in a minute. But what what we have here, front and center, are the students who are struggling. Because when you log in, that's probably why you're logging in, because you want to see, is there anyone on this plan instruction list that needs my direct intervention? And so in this first grade class, you can see that in this plan instruction list, you see the number of students who need instruction and the number of skills. So we've got 5 students here that need instruction. And what you're going to see is the level of Lexia that they're working on, and then the area that they're struggling with, and then their name. And then across from their name is the lesson that they need. If there are students who are struggling on the same skill, they will be grouped together. So here's Bridget and Lonnie. They both need help in categorizing words. And so if you were going to be getting ready to work with them, you don't have to go to the Lexia lesson library. You can find the lesson right here, and I can open that up and scroll down, take a look at some of those direct instruction ideas, guided practice, independent application, and adaptations, as well as what the manipulatives are for that lesson. So that's what you're going to want to look at. I did mention that you can set the default because Lexia does send you a message when the student is struggling. So that default can be changed when you go up here where your name is, right? If you're in the demo site, it says class demo, but there's something that says my profile. This won't appear when I go into this site because it's just a demo site, but on your site, right in this area, you should have the ability to change that default to, right, the default is semi-monthly. You can change that to some other options there. So, because Lexia will send you a reminder, give you an update. Here are the students who are on the plan instruction list, as well as students who have completed a certificate. So if I slide all the way down to the bottom of the page, this is where you're going to see the whole class. And I was talking about certificates. So if I go over here to this last column, I can see students who have earned a certificate. And all of these columns are sortable. So if I sort on, if I click on the certificates, all of the people who earn certificates now are grouped together. I wanted to show you what this new certificate looks like because I think it's really cool because there's more information here than there used to be. And with the idea of making it clear to parents, especially the kinds of skills the student has mastered. So instead of just saying vowel combinations, it says, I can read and spell words with vowel combinations like boy, crown, and flu. And so, it's a little bit, makes a little more sense to a parent. And then at the bottom here, there's like, let's practice, and so there's some suggestions for how these skills might continue to be practiced at home. So it's a nice communication, nice way to celebrate, and a nice communication piece with the home. So I'm going to close that. And what you want to look at in this list, as well as the certificate, is this whole area called prescription of intensity, because this is where the recommended minutes, that target is indicated. All right. So if we look at this week, this section, there's 2 columns. One is actual and one is target. So the target is, what we were talking about, the target number of minutes. You can see that in this group, it varies. So if students haven't used Lexia like over the summer, or if they're brand new to using Lexia, this target will likely be the same. And so, it might be like It might be 20 minutes for our kindergartners and first graders, and 60 minutes for our second and third graders, and 80 minutes for fourth and fifth graders, just to start out as the system is getting to know them. And then that target will, like I said, change at the beginning of every month. And in the column next to the target is the actual number of minutes. And so this is starting on Monday and ending on Sunday, anytime the student is in Lexia. If they're working at home, if they're working at school, before school, anytime they're working on Lexia, that is, these minutes accumulate. And so you can see, if I sort on this week, I can see actual from the least amount to the most amount, 256 minutes and being the most, and 0 meaning the least. And so this is where, if you're going to be monitoring the students, trying to be sure that they meet that target, right, then you can see how they're doing. And this add column is a nice feature, because let's say you want to just be sure who needs who needs additional minutes. That's what that add means. Add 60 more and you meet your target. And so you can just group those together, and now here are the 6 students that I need to try to be sure that they get access to the software before the end of the week. So I'm hoping that if you have questions, you're popping them into today's meet or into Blue Jeans. This last week column, that just tells you these are the folks who met their minutes last week. It doesn't mean that the others didn't work in Lexia, they didn't meet their target. So really, so when you're using the My Lexia software, these are the 2 primary things you want to be looking at. Here are the students who are struggling. Here is how they're doing with their minutes, so that you can help them meet their minutes. I mean, having this information about the actual number of minutes is important, because you might say, Wilton worked 256 minutes. That's all well and good, but Wilton really needs to be working in math, and he's spending too much time on reading. So it's you can kind of see this and kind of help to refocus if you need some of your students. Now, we didn't talk about a couple of other things on this page. One is the performance predictors. So what Lexia does is look again at trying to get students to that end of the year benchmark, and in this case, the end of first grade. And depending on where they're at and how far they need to go, they will be given a performance predictor. So it's a probability that they will meet that end of the year benchmark. And so right now in Archer's first grade class, 35% of the students are on target and 41% are at high risk. So they have a 1 in 30% chance of meeting the end of the year benchmark if they continue using the software the way they have been using it. And it also looks at rate and accuracy of the student as well. And this meeting usage tells you the percentage of students in this class who've met usage for the last 4 weeks. So looking at that week and saying, here are the students who met their weekly minutes. So that's an answer. We were looking at the question, who is struggling, right? And how is my class progressing? One more report on how is my class progressing, because you can get a sense of how your class is progressing here by looking at how they're doing with their minutes. And here's the skills completed. Again, I can sort on that, and I can see here are my students with the with the more beginning area, and then to here are my students who've completed the most units. But there's another report that I wanted to be sure you see, and that's this skills report right here, right underneath that plan instruction list. This report gives you another look at the whole class, and it's really nice to see. This is the whole class, and if you slide down, you can see it in this first grade class. 6% of them are working at kindergarten, 65% first grade, 24% second, 6% in fourth. These chevrons indicate that the student auto-placed through that level and is 49% complete with level 6. And what I like to do is to sort on units to target. Now I have my class lined up with the fewest units to target, because remember, all of those reading levels, with those 4 or 5 reading areas, have a certain number of units. They have to get 90 to 100% in every one of those units to complete that level. So this student, the check mark indicates these are levels they completed, and this is where they're at. So this student completed 300 units, has 0 units to target. So you see your class kind of lined up from your high flyers to the students who are struggling the most. And that's kind of nice to look at too, as you're trying to, organize resources to support them. So I'm going to go back to the Archer first grade. So the question about how do I support an individual student, you want to look at two reports. One is the student combined report. So if I click on the student's name in this plan instruction list or from this list of students here, I'm going to go back to my first grade class here. So if I click on, let's try Leah here. This is just a report about Leah. So here's where she's at. She's a first grader. She's working on level 7. This is her performance predictor. It's changed a little bit. She stumbled a little here. She's at 27% probability of meeting the end of the first grade. Here's a nice snapshot of her usage. So green bars mean she's met her minutes that week. Gray means, she has minutes, but not enough to meet her target. And here's the action plan, no achievements. Here's where she is at with her minutes. So she's doing great this week with her minutes. Now she needs a lesson in contractions and word families. And the nice thing about this individual, the student combined report, is that this is where you can dig deeper. Now I'm going to be working with Leah. I can see she is struggling with who, what, when, where, how. So let's click on this contraction and word families, and we're going to see this is where you're going to see the date that she worked. And let's go down to contractions and word families. The time of day, the number of minutes, the unit that she was working on during that period, and then type of error, and then standard, guided, and instruction. Those are the times that she was in each of those steps of instructional branching. So she worked on Unit 1 for a pretty long time, and may have been flagged for direct instruction here because she was in this instruction area 3 times, but she must have gotten help and moved on. And Unit 2 she was working on, and that's where she's at now, and this is why she's struggling. You can see the number of minutes that she's worked. So she's really been working on this hard, and it's hard to know. I mean, we don't know from this report if the teacher worked with her, but she definitely was flagged for direct instruction way up here, and then continued to work, and it's still still struggling with this concept. So that's a little bit about that lesson. And then I said that in this student combined report is where you'd see if she was eligible for a skill builder. Here are the most recent skill builders under independent practice. You can open them up here. More practice will give you all the skill builders that she's eligible for that you could print out and have her work on. And then you can see how she's doing in the current level. And then you can click on her individual skills report. So if I open this up, this is a nice report to send home to parents because it gives you a nice snapshot of the levels of Lexia and when she started, where she's at, how she's doing. This is where you'll see the rate and accuracy. So she's currently working on level 7, medium average, low average, low average. So you can get a picture of where she's at in rate and accuracy. So let me just check if there are, because we're right almost to 2 o'clock here, or not 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And we've talked a lot about the different, oh, I know what I didn't show you, and I promised I would do this before you left. So I've got 2 minutes. All right, I wanted to talk about how you add students. So I'm going to have to log out of here because I can't do this in the demonstration site. You'll be able to see this if you're logged in with your username and password. And I'm just going to go into a different training site. And you'll see it's very, very, very straightforward. So I'm going to choose my training and implementation school. And the tab that we haven't talked very much about is this Manage tab. And if you click on the Manage tab, this is where you can, you probably won't be selecting a school, but I'm going to be selecting my training and implementation school. And if you have more than one class, then you'll see the classes that you are a teacher in. And so I'm going to select my first grade class here. And when I do that, I can go over to the end where there's a pencil, which allows me to edit the class. And this is where I can modify students, modify staff. So if you wanted to add another staff member to your class, I'm going to modify student right here. And the students that are in this school will be listed here. And it's probably, well, what I have here are all the students in first grade. So all the students that are enrolled, that are in Lexia in first grade will be on this list. There's only 2 of them in my case. And so all I need to do if I'm going to add a student is select them and then add to selected students. And then there they are right there. I'm going to click done and then save. And so now I have 3 students in my class. I do want to show you one other thing. I'm going to select student here. And let's say you wanted to modify something. So I've got Claire Daly. And I want to modify some things. Maybe her name is spelled incorrectly or she's in the wrong grade. I can change that. You know, demographic information in program. And so this is where I was talking about how let's say Claire, I want Claire's native language is Spanish. And so now I can select Spanish and she can hear those directions in Spanish. And I would click save. And so when Claire goes into Core 5, she'll be able to hear those directions in Spanish. Now, just be sure to clarify again, that is only going to happen when the Core 5 version 2 is released. You don't have that capability yet with the current version. That is not an option for us. Okay, so that's how you add students and adjust some things for individual students. So we are a little bit beyond 4 o'clock, and I know many of you are at the end of your day and ready to go, and there may be some of you who would like to stay for a little while longer. I will just wait to hear from you about what you would like to do. So maybe Debbie, if you let me know how things are going in Chico, and Kalisha, how things are going in Mablevale, and Natisha, how are things going at Dodd? All right, great. Nope, no questions. All right. I did want to, for those of you who are very technology savvy, I want to be sure that you do know that there is a My Lexia mobile, My Lexia app, so that you can easily check on your iPhone or your Android device how your students are doing. So it was great to be with you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll get that recording to Emma as soon as it's ready.